Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Welcome everyone. Today we're exploring what has to be one of history's ultimate underdog stories, the saga of the Kandyan Kingdom in Sri Lanka. I mean, think about it. For centuries, while these massive global empires were just swallowing up territories left and right all over the map, this one singular isolated kingdom held its ground. It's an epic tale of brilliant strategy, deep spiritual resilience, and honestly, a really tragic collapse.
So, here's the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did a small island kingdom resist three global empires for over 300 years? We're going to break down exactly how the Kandyan Kingdom managed to hold off the military might of the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the British. But, and here's the kicker, we'll also see how, after centuries of outsmarting the strongest military forces on the planet, they came to realize their most fatal threat was actually entirely internal.
To figure this out, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The mountain fortress. 2. Repelling the Portuguese. 3. The Dutch alliance. 4. A cultural revival. And 5. The fall of Kandy.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the mountain fortress and its geographic shield.
Imagine a city perfectly locked away in the central hills of Sri Lanka. Established towards the end of the 15th century, Senkadagala, or the city of Kandy as it came to be known, wasn't just a capital, it was a literal geographic stronghold. The sheer elevation alone completely isolated the ruling center from the vulnerable, easily accessible coastal areas.
The crucial thing to understand here is that before a single brick was ever laid for a wall, nature itself had already built a fortress. Access from the lowcountry was nearly impossible for foreign invaders. You've got the massive Mahaweli River acting like this fast-flowing, rushing moat. Then you've got the Hanthana and Udawatta mountain ranges acting as towering natural ramparts. If an invading army wanted to get in, they couldn't just march up in formation. They had to funnel through these incredibly treacherous mountain passes, like Balana and Hunnasgiriya. We're talking about a logistical nightmare for anyone trying to drag heavy artillery up those hills.
Moving right along to Section 2, repelling the Portuguese, the kingdom's first invaders.
Over the course of 3 centuries, the kingdom had to systematically outsmart a rising tide of colossal European empires. The Portuguese were the very first to arrive in Lanka, right at the beginning of the 16th century. They seized the coastal areas pretty quickly, but, they didn't just stay on the coast. They constantly meddled in the political affairs of the Kandyan Kingdom, desperately trying to establish puppet rulers they could control.
And that brings us to one of the most incredible historical figures in this story, Kanapu Bandara. Talk about a wild backstory. Earlier in his life, he actually fled to the Portuguese to save himself and was even baptized by them as Don Juan. The Portuguese totally thought they had him in their pocket. They sent him back up to Kandy to protect a puppet ruler they were trying to install. But instead, he rebelled. He seized power for himself in 1592 and crowned himself King Wimaladarma Surya I. Obviously, the Portuguese were absolutely furious and tried to crush him, but he secured massive, kingdom-defining victories against them at the Battle of Danturi in 1594 and the Battle of Balana in 1602. He basically slammed the fortress door right in their faces.
Which leads us nicely into Section 3, the Dutch alliance, the ultimate enemy of my enemy scenario.
Enter King Raja Singha II. He was the longest ruling Kandyan king, reigning from 1635 all the way to 1687. And he had a fierce, singular determination: get the Portuguese out of his country. He had already dealt them a crushing defeat at the Battle of Ganarua in 1638, but to completely expel them from the island, he made a massive geopolitical gamble. In 1658, he allied with the Dutch. They joined forces, fought the Portuguese, and actually succeeded in driving them out for good.
But, well, there is a huge catch. The dramatic irony here is heavy, guys. The king strategically used the Dutch to oust the Portuguese, only to realize he had simply swapped one colonizer for another on his beaches. King Raja Singha II had really hoped to become the king of the entire country, but the Dutch just refused to leave the coastal areas they had just helped free. So the Kandyan Kingdom remained locked up in their mountains, now surrounded by a brand new European power.
Let's pivot a bit for Section 4, a cultural revival, focusing on Kandy's spiritual shield.
Amidst all this constant warfare, Kandy wasn't just a military base. It was the literal protector of faith. For instance, during times of intense threat, the sacred tooth relic, literally the most venerated object in Sri Lankan Buddhism, was hidden away inside an ordinary-looking Kurahan grinding stone at the Dalgamarova Vihara.
It was our rebel hero from earlier, King Wamala Dharmasuriya I, who finally brought the relic out of hiding and deposited it safely in Kandy. It really shows how this geographic fortress doubled as a sanctuary for the island's most precious heritage.
And this spiritual foundation fueled a massive cultural revival under King Kirti Sri Raja Singha in the mid-18th century. You see, after decades of war, the Buddhist dispensation had severely declined. They could barely even find fully ordained monks. So, guided by the venerable Saranankara Sangaraja Thero, they sent a mission all the way to Thailand. And get this, they traveled on Dutch ships. In 1753, they brought back the Upasampada, or higher ordination, originating the Siam sect that still exists today. What's truly incredible here is that King Kirti Sri Raja Singha was actually a Hindu of the Nayakar dynasty, yet he renovated massive Buddhist temples like Dambulla and heavily patronized the Dalada Parahera. It was just a profound display of unity and cultural preservation inside the fortress.
But tragically, we have to move to Section 5, the fall of Kandy, the rot from within.
It's wild to think about the shifting tides of the early 19th century. In 1803, the British sent Governor North to invade Kandy, but King Sri Wickramabahu had the total, unwavering support of his people, and the British completely failed. The geographic shield held firm. But fast forward just 12 years to 1815, and Governor Brownrigg invades and succeeds. Why the difference? A severe political crisis had erupted. The king had massive disputes with his powerful chief minister, the Ma Adikaram Pilimatlawe, and the local elite. The relationships completely broke down. The king became entirely unprotected within his own walls, and the local elite literally allowed the British to take over.
So the absolute crucial takeaway from all of this is the classic Trojan horse motif. Think about it. For 300 years, no matter if it was the Portuguese, the Dutch, or the early British forces, global empires could not breach this natural fortress with external cannons or sheer military might. The mountains and the rivers always held strong. But internal political divisions, betrayal by the kingdom's own elite, and a massive fracture between the ruler and the ruled, that's what destroyed it from the inside out in 1815.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. I want to leave you with this provocative final thought about the tragic end of the Kandyan Kingdom. Does a fortress truly fall to the enemy outside, or the divisions within? The mountains of Kandy never failed to protect the kingdom. It was the people who eventually failed each other. I hope this analysis helps you view history's underdog stories in a brand new light, reminding us that unity is often a far stronger defense than geography. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and keep learning.